President Tinubu is in the news again, and we're starting with him. This time around, he has advised Nigerians living in the United States to adopt a success-oriented mindset and see Nigeria as a land of business opportunities and leave behind the frustrations of past leadership. I find that to be very remarkable. You know, he was at, he's still there in New York at a forum with Nigerians in diaspora, whereby I had to advise them to think of investing in Nigeria, you know, business opportunities. And he also laid emphasis on the need to forget about the things that happened in the past, the frustration of the past leadership, which for me, I find that to be remarkable. Idahosa'S, what's your take?
Well, I think the president of Nigeria hasn't disappointed so many of us who really believe that he understood what the fundamentals are and is speaking to them. I was so much enthused when I heard Tony Elumelu at the side of the visit to the NASDAQ 2 days ago saying, we have a businessman as president and it will no longer be business as usual. And I think this is what is being spoken to. There's a whole lot of issue, trust deficits in Nigeria. A lot of people who had been encouraged to come back home before, and they came and they saw things were not the way they should be. Such frustration would not allow people to want to come. Some people came and they have lost money because of the fiscal and monetary policies regime that were, of course, had to be deliberately controlled by previous regimes. So these are real issues. And you see, he's speaking to the diasporans and say, look, you are doing well, excellently well in the US. We hear that, of course, the Nigerian community is the most enlightened community in the US, and that's outstanding. You are doing well in business. Continue to do well, but understand that, of course, no matter how beautiful the city looks like, home is still home. We need you back home. We want to build this nation together. And this is important because every leader who does not understand change management is not likely to succeed. So what the president is trying to do is to manage the changes that are occurring, trying to appeal and speak to the people that, look, we are transforming, we are reforming. Just look at what we're doing. We're going to stay focused. We will arrive at our destination. Bring your money home. It will be safe. It will be secured. Your investment will be protected as long as we're on the saddle. And I think this is quite reassuring for the diasporans so that they also are now beginning to regain hope and confidence in the government. And once we can deal with the issue of the trust deficit, a lot is going to happen in Nigeria. And I think the same issues that Blessing tried to speak to yesterday when we're looking at speaking from the international politics to domestic politics. And I think we still also need to build even a lot of trust amongst us. And I think Tony Elumelu spoke to that in New York, and he said, yes, while Nigeria is opening its doors for foreign investment to come, even they who are local players, they are also getting set to key into what the government is doing and all the hope that is being raised by the president. They also want to take advantage of it, put more money in the system, and that a long-awaited infrastructural gap would have been taken care of.
Yes, I want to begin from what Femi talked about, the president asking that Nigerians forget about the frustrations of past leadership, because if we keep looking at what has happened before, it will sap the energy with which we would go forward. So I think the past is done, even though we still feel the effects of the past, but we should focus more, our energy should be more on how we can move forward. The more we dwell on the past, the more we reignite the pains that we have felt, and it takes away any kind of the trust that we want to have in the current administration. So it's a good direction. Leave what has happened in the past. let's focus on the present and let's think of how to move forward. And the president's also urging Nigerians in diaspora to be success-oriented. And I think that's a great admonishment, because they too have the struggles that they're going through over there. Like Idahosa'S would say, there is no green grass anywhere. It is those who are there who water the grasses. So it's not very easy for some of them. Some may be thinking, what do I do? Do I quit? Do I just come back home? But the president is saying to you, be success-oriented, makes you want to think again, what can I do to be better at what I'm currently doing, or to get to the next level?
You see, Blessing just spoke to that. You see, it just reminded me the last meeting that the president had with delegation from Rivers State, while he was speaking to them, and said, look, Nigeria has no business being poor. We don't have problem with resources. We don't have problem with people. What we have got to grapple with since independence are two basic issues. One, leadership, and two, management. And that, of course, sounds to me the same thought pattern in this conversation. That what you're looking at is that you're seeing that what do leaders do? Leaders are pathfinders. They set a clear goal and vision to say, this is where we want to be. The manager takes those visions and operationalize them. Now, when you have deficit in leadership, which means, of course, there are no clear direction, no clear vision. Of course, even if you have excellent managers, they will be just heading nowhere. Like the story in Alice the Wonderland. If you don't know where you are going, then it will take you there. And this is why you find that there have been this rift between agencies of government, because there's no clear goal set by leaders. So that deficit has been with us for a while. So he is saying this is a problem. Once we have good leadership who can clearly set out goals and objectives of where we want to go, and then you have competent hands to operationalize those goals, put them into actionable, KPIs, you will find that the nation will really recover its fortunes. And I think this is important, that we must begin to look at it. And President Tinubu is saying, look, I'm going to provide leadership. We have competent people who will help us put these ideas and make them real for all of us. And also telling them, you come back home. You also have roles to play. In short, as a matter of fact, he said, we have taken some of you to be part of this process. So we still want many of you to come and join us and build a nation.
You talked about the need for a leader to set the pace and then for the managers to take it up from there. That will take me to Dele Alake, one of President Tinubu's manager, who is taking advantage of that forum, and in this light is saying that the country is ready to meet the global demand for critical minerals. Speaking at a special session during the United Nations General Assembly in New York, Alake emphasized the need for Nigeria to be one of the top players in the energy sector due to its mineral resources. Despite lagging behind in mining, Nigeria possesses mineral deposits valued at $700 billion. So earlier you were talking about the need for leaders to set the pace and for the managers to take it up from there. Now, taking advantage of the same forum, President Tinubu set the pace. He's been being the spokesperson for Nigeria and as far as Africa is concerned. And now the manager, now in this slide, that's the Minister for Solid Minerals, Dele Alake, is also trying to put to the world the potential, that inherent in that ministry as far as solid minerals is concerned. And it's looking at an opportunity for Nigeria to be one of the top 10 players as far as the world is concerned. And this mineral deposit are being valued at $700 billion. That's huge.
Some years ago, we were in Abu Dhabi with one of our friends who was in charge of the Emirates Club Strategic Studies. And we're having this conversation. I think then a delegation from Nigeria, led by the past president, who was then the vice president, visited, of course, the king of the Emirates. And they were having this conversation, what they call the Abu Dhabi Accord. And they came up to present what was really under our ground. And humorously, he put it this way. He said to me, all the precious precious stones that is read in the Bible, that Nigerian had them in commercial quantity under our ground. That if we were really not to have oil and just to leverage on precious stone alone, we will be among one of the richest countries in the world. But over the years, we really have not paid so much attention to this that God had given to us. And this is what you see the Minister of Solid Mineral is pioneering. That look, they are not just here to just talk about solid mineral, asking people. The government is ready to do business in the solid mineral. And he is saying he is actually going to create Solid Mineral Corporation after the order of NNPC that's managing the oil. So you're going to have a company on its own to manage this huge wealth that nature has given to us. And so what Alake is saying is, look, there's so much we can do. Let's set up business around this. And of course, like I've said here, some weeks ago, the investment in solid mineral is something that is huge. So you need a lot of people who will come in here to come and invest. And you can see how strategic the president is in selecting those who went with him to Ongai, so that everybody can have opportunity to begin a business. So we're really seeing a government ready to do or live to his biddings. So we are expecting that this particular visit to the US will bring in a lot of investment in that sector. And once we have this investment in that sector, all the things that has hitherto trouble us as a nation will no longer be there. You see, because the whole warfare, the whole crisis we've had is how to share the oil money. Now you can imagine that we're no longer just sharing oil money, we are sharing oil money from TAC, we are sharing money from Californium, we are sharing money from other precious stones. So there will be no pressure on the value that is coming in from oil. And I think this will be good for Nigeria. We really need to open up that sector and see how people can play their big, and then we get the best for it.
All right, moving on, the Nigeria Central Bank has announced the postponement of its Monetary Policy Committee meeting, originally scheduled for September 25th, 26th, with no immediate indication of the reason behind the delay. The decision to reschedule the meeting comes shortly after President Tinubu nominated a new central bank governor and 4 deputy governors. You know, there's supposed to be the Monetary Policy Committee meeting, which is the committee arms of the CBN, the bank committee arm of the CBN, which was initially scheduled for September 25th, 26th. But there's a need to postpone it now. I strongly want to believe it has to do with the fact that you don't have a substantial CBN governor now, and then the president has sent some names to the National Assembly, that of the Central Bank, and 4 deputy deputy CBN governor to be confirmed by the Senate. I strongly want to believe it's because of this record, because you can't have that kind of a meeting without having someone who is officially recognized as the Central Bank governor. And this is the reason why this meeting has been postponed. Talk to us about that.
I don't think it's because there's nobody who is the CBN governor, because we have an acting CBN governor, and by law, he's empowered to actually chair that meeting. But I guess what it is the fact that, of course, we are having new board coming on, and they also want to hit the ground running. And we cannot run away from the fact that the last board of the CBN made a whole lot of blunders in terms of managing this MPC. So this is critical to what we're going to gain as we move into the new budget year. So it's just natural that, of course, we have to give room for Senate to clear this new board to set a new direction for the CBN. Like Albert Einstein will say, insanity is when a man keeps doing the same thing and expect a different result. So we have had a CBN for the past 8 years who have been having one form of thought, one way of thinking. So I think we have to disrupt that thinking. And that is why, of course, the president brought in a whole lot of experienced bankers who understand the terrain, and then we'll be able to set a new pace for the monetary policy for Nigeria. I think this is what is trying to play out.
And I think too that they understand that since the new board will be coming on, whatever decisions that they make at the end of the NPC meeting may be upturned by the new board. You made reference to some blunders that were made by the current board. You know, over the last couple of years, we've seen after monetary policy meeting, rate hikes, several decisions aimed at addressing fiscal policy issues that really didn't go well with the economy. But we're hopeful that after the Senate hearings and the confirmations, MPC meetings will hold and the decisions will be very favorable to the economy.
All right, let's take the news analysis to Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, where ground rent payments to make increase in daily revenue has increased, to 1 billion naira. This was as a result of, the ultimatum given by the agency involved, and then as a result of, the threat from the minister, also that if those who are defaulting are not making payments, that within 2 weeks their lands will be revoked and all that. And you now see a jump in the revenue, just within few weeks. What does this suggest to you about leadership and then taking up responsibility?
Yesterday I spoke to you about what is usually regarded as a fraud triangle, where you have pressure, you have opportunities, and then you can rationalize. It allows for a lot to happen. And I think this is what is happening, that over the last years, we have had in Nigeria that you see those who lead us are afraid to deal with the real issues which confront us. You see, I just joined this with what Umahi was saying while he was inspecting the East-West Road. And he said, this is not about me, it's about God, really. That if in the last 23 years, we have poured trillions and trillions and trillions of naira on this road, and you put money in today, tomorrow the road fails. And then, of course, this regime is saying, look, no more asphalt, use concrete. And the whole team of contractors and civil servants are blackmailing the Minister of Works and the whole government. It speaks to what a kind of a system that we have run over the years. A lot of people had run away with Nigerian resources. And they are making billions into their pockets, and they are not paying rent to government. Taxes that are due are not remitted. But there are some people within the civil service who are protecting these enemies of the state. And this is the real issue. And this is what you're seeing. So if you have somebody, a leader, who is saying no to this rubbish, then of course people will change. Somebody said the other day, and he said, look, we're all talking about values in Nigeria. You see, but when you see Nigeria and they go abroad, they behave. Why wouldn't they behave? Because if the law catches up with you, you know what it means. You will pay dearly. There is nobody to call. And this is the real issue. And I think we must get to that point in our national life where, of course, we have a president who has the issue of Nigeria at heart, that no matter how highly placed you are, if you are contravening the laws of the land, you should be dealt with according to the laws, without any interference or exuberances of those you have actually recruited to help you govern. This is what you're seeing. We see here from the Minister of FCT about 165 land licensing, certificate of occupancy had been revoked. In the city center, you have a land holding it the last 15 years, not developed, and you are speculating the land, which means you don't need it in the first place. So these licenses are being revoked. I know that a lot of people are going to say, oh, they're going to their cronies, but the question is, why are these lands not given to those who need them? So this is the real issues that faces us. And I hope that other aspects of revenue leakages will also be affected, so that the much needed resource that we need to kickstart the development of Nigeria start to come into the coffers.
Yeah, and I think, like I've always said, people don't do what is expected, they do what is inspected. So this is a way of whipping people back into line. Until the ultimatum, the money wasn't available to pay the ground rent. So once the ultimatum came, the money became available. So when there are no punitive measures for things, you don't expect that people will do what they should do. It's only when there are consequences attached to certain actions that people will begin to do what they are meant to do. And I think that's just the way to go in a lot of things in Nigeria. To crime, to every other thing, there should be consequences for certain actions. That's the only way we can sanitize the system.
I really still wonder that many of the ministers, you see, we also spoke about the international passport the other day, and you know, a whole lot of bagla are done just because the minister has spoken, he has not taken any action. We really need to see some scapegoats, so that many people who are still trying to watch, you know, I remember speaking to some people in 2016, and we were having this conversation, and one man told me, and he said, you see, we were looking, and when we saw the body language and saw things were not working, we went back to our old ways. Now, this is the way people think. So we need to sustain this. That is not just to just gain an immediate trust from the people. We must sustain it as a way of life. Just the way some Adelaja put it, Nigeria must begin to enforce righteousness.
All right, let's take the train now from Abuja to Niger. Yeah. So the latest news coming from Niger is the fact that President Bazoum has approached the ECOWAS court to seek for his release. You know, he has been in custody for months. It's quite interesting that now he's taking his case to the ECOWAS courts to seek redress and to seek, you know, he's talking about the violation of his human right and his freedom. What do you think can come out of this? You know, that was
Well, I don't see so much coming out because the imbroglio is still on. The coup has happened, and the juntas, they don't live or rule by the law or constitution. I don't know how much power that the ECOWAS court will have to be able to call these people to attention. It's going to really be difficult, but it is nice that, of course, he's speaking out, of course, to say, of course, let there be a decision from the ECOWAS to say, release him, which, of course, ECOWAS have been saying before now.
They even gave them ultimatum in the first place,
so,
which was
so I don't see how court will be able to enforce his release as it were. But I think it's just to see how we can really manage some of the issues that really affect us. But again, that reminds me of when Bola Ahmed Tinubu, our own dear president, was speaking to Antonio Guterres yesterday, and he told him that, of course, these big powers, they should stop hiding behind human rights to steal our resources and halt reforms in Africa. You see, because every time you want to address big issues, people have to always say human right, human right. But that said, I think the juntas in Niger Republic need, if they have taken over power successfully, they should release the man and allow him to live his normal life. I don't think he's now in control of the army. I don't think what kind of mobilization he can do. But they can keep him somewhere he can be free to move around and live his life. And if there are things that they feel he has done wrongly, then of course they can approach the law and deal with it according to the law of Niger Republic, than really abusing him and denying him access to medication, access to his family members and friends. But I think that is not really nice enough.
Yeah, and they should know that you cannot solve a wrong with also a wrong approach. So if you say someone is committed crime, then go the right route. And then appealing to ECOWAS, I think ECOWAS should also be careful at this point, because appeals like this should not provoke any use of force, because it will not be favorable to Africa in any way. What can be done is an appeal and maybe call for talks with the junta, if they would honor such talks, to come to maybe a round table and see what's the way forward with this. But more than that, I don't think there's much the international community, much that ECOWAS can do, because nobody will want to engage the use of force.
Yeah, but this has actually been a debate. As a student of international relations, this conversation is ongoing, even in the academies, how effective and how useful really international bodies such as UN, ECOWAS, AU, because they don't have the force of a government. And that's why over the last 2 or 3 decades, people have actually been advocating for a supranational body that is fully endowed with requisite power to be able to enforce its sanctions. Because whether you like it or not, the United Nations, International Court of Justice, they don't have a standing army, they don't have a standing police to be able to actually execute the sanctions that are imposed. And this is a constraint on this global body, because all that you can do is actually to appeal to the conscience and the goodwill of whoever that is doing what. So this is a constraint, and that's why people are seriously agitating. And if you look at what has happened, this build-up to a federation of earth, you know, I saw a document called the Constitution of the Federation of Earth, which is very written, giving strong power to these multilateral organizations, international body, to be able to enforce sanctions where it is necessary. Until that happens, you can only have pronouncement. And you hear the president told the secretary to the United Nations yesterday, the UN must move from talking to action. So at the moment, we can only do talking. There's not so much of action that can be done.
All right, let's look at, before we wrap up, let's look at what is happening in Rwanda, where the president has decided to seek re-election, you know, after spending about 25 years, and he's been in power for 25 years. Remarkably, in 2015, the constitution was amended, you know, to pave way for his long tenure, unlike what we have here in Nigeria, where an average president of governor is expected to serve for 4 years, or if you seek re-election, that would be another 4 years, making 8 years. But in the case of Rwanda, you know, the constitution has been amended in a way that the president can stay as long as his people want him to be there. This is a president who has been in power for 25 years. One person will just imagine, what else does he want? What does he want? Again, he's seeking re-election.
Well, I think if history is anything to go by, when you find a strong man who lead reform and get out of the way, it's always very easy for the dog to go back to his vomit, or the swine to go back to the mud after it's fully washed. And I think this is a challenge that is in Rwanda. When I was in Rwanda last month, 2 months ago, we had this conversation. And this conversation was, how will a Rwanda look like after Paul Kagame? And this is real challenge for the Rwandese. Because when you see where they are coming from and where they are at the moment, can we really say that Rwanda has actually healed? This is the real challenge. And even many Rwandese are concerned about this. Can we find somebody who will be able to sustain this relative peace that we enjoy today? And will be able to act the same way Paul Kagame is acting. And that's why you see, before the last election, even the Rwandese carry placard and say, you cannot go. Because as is seen today, Kagame is seen as a demigod. Because in a very few years, he was able to turn around the fortunes of Rwanda, coming out of a heinous genocide and trying to weld the communities together to live as one. Now also building a modern Rwanda that is a model to the world. Now, if you are listening to the interview of Governor of Anambra State, Charles Oludo, when they came back from Rwanda, and he said so many glowing things about Rwanda in terms of the kind of systems that is happening in Rwanda. And this is an African country that just fought a terrible civil war, and this man was able to pull them out. So you understand what this means. This happened to Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. He has to be there for 33 years, and even when he stepped aside due to age, he still had to be there to oversee that things were being done rightly. This is the challenge in Rwanda, and of course, Paul Kagame needed before now to really have mentored somebody who should take over from him. And I think many African leaders need to know this. And of course, this also affects us that until a leader is about to leave office, they don't think about successor. Successor planning should be part and parcel of the program of every leader, knowing that you cannot be there forever. And therefore, you must groom somebody who takes over from you when you leave office. And if this is not done, you will find the Rwanda kind of experience.
I don't even believe that the fact that a leader is doing well, you have to stay in power for that. There's this saying that you leave the stage when you have the loudest ovation. You don't wait till when the ovation has reduced before you leave. If as a president, you've done your bit for 25 years. In fact, the fact that you are a successful leader is the fact that you have a good successor. And if in a country you have billions of people, you can't get a good success, then it shows your leadership has question mark. So for me, I don't think it's a reason for him to be in power. You leave the state when you have the loudest ovation. And it's also important to set a pace so that at least, others can also take a clue. But he has an escape, which is the constitution. The constitution of Rwanda supports.
So it's not, you see, it's very easy to say, leave the stage while the ovation is loudest. But it's also something that we have seen, even in leadership and management circles, especially in Africa, where psychophancy is a discipline. It's difficult to actually see people who think they are following you, and all they are just doing, they are just waiting for you to leave the stage. See, the challenge is that the heart, if it was just a natural case, that the man just came and met a situation where there was no warfare, there were no differences, there were no bad blood, now this could be. But we're looking at a nation that was almost being wiped out under the supervision of international communities. If you look at the ICC judgment on Rwanda, you see churches were complicit. Countries, international countries were complicit from the Western Europe in the challenge. And all these things, all of these people, they are still waiting. And the worst of it is that you are having a lot of people who are around the neighborhood of Rwanda as guerrilla warfare, waiting for the man to leave. This is the situation in Rwanda. And I think, yes, he needed to have mentored somebody, which he has not done up to now. and we don't know what is responsible. But I think African leaders need to learn what mentorship is all about.